Hello and welcome to another episode of UpGrade with Maria Kay, the podcast where your success, freedom and happiness get a weekly boost. I'm Maria Kay and I am absolutely passionate about you living your best life yet. I'm absolutely passionate about you waking up to a life that you in the past only dreamt of. Today's episode is one of those juicy ones where I have an absolutely amazing special guest with me. I am here with Vanille Makwakwa, who is actually sitting right next to me. We are both together here in the amazingness of India, Goa, and we are on an absolute amazing journey together, collaborating, sharing ideas. Now, Vanille is a personal finance author, speaker and coach right up my street and your street. And today we are bringing to you the very first episode in a 3-part series all about money. Yes, that big old word, money. Vanille, welcome.
Thank you, Maria. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, we're going to get straight into today's topic, money, dirty or divine. And I'm going to launch immediately over to Vanille and ask her to just give us a bit of a lowdown on the history of money.
Well, money has always actually been around as a medium of exchange. Maybe not the money that we have right now, not the paper and coins that we have. But if you go through history, there have been cultures that had coins made just to be able to exchange for value. And for many years, most cultures used gold, would carry around gold to be able to buy things, or some cultures would use rubies or diamonds or some other precious minerals, and then with also butter. So money really came about as a medium of exchange because obviously, gold became a little heavier, and as the world's population continued to grow, not everybody could be out there mining gold and getting gold bars and carrying around gold. And same with rubies and diamonds. So we came up with this easier way to be able to exchange for value, which is where you get your paper money and your coins. And obviously now money's also become more elaborate because we're an innovative species. So over time, then we've now come up with interesting things like derivatives, and we've come up with credit cards. So yeah, money's always been around.
So today we're really going to dissect what money is, where it came from, how important it is, and we're really going to look at, is it dirty or is it divine? Now, I know that each of us go through life accumulating and picking up our own very, very distinct money stories and money beliefs. Some of the beliefs that we carry are positive and they serve us, but many of them are limiting and they absolutely give us a hard time. So I want to ask you, Vanille, why does money really matter?
Well, money really matters because money determines the kind of lifestyle that you're going to have. So if you think of how most of us are now living, I was saying just the other day that I see a huge difference in how changing my money story and deciding to make money, deciding that money was important in my life has really changed how I live. So before, even when I was on my financial journey and paying off my debts, I would take on jobs, and I was working at a university for 12 months. I very rarely work for anyone, but I needed to take on a job. And in that moment, I realized that I'd moved from the States back to South Africa to be able to spend time with my family. But because of my job and my money wasn't in order, I had to really stay where I was working, and it would be a 2-hour flight to fly home, and I could never really see my family. The minute I sorted out my finances, like for example this year, I've been able to travel to various countries, but also spend 4 months already just with my family. Give them, and this means like I wake up, I see my mom, I can drive over to be with my dad, to see my aunts. I get to choose how I manage my time. So the link between time and money makes money very important, because also money determines how we live our lives. So Maria, for example, with you, I'm sure you've already seen how when it comes to having money, you've been able to then change the way that you live your entire life. We're able to live in various countries because we've chosen to change our finances. So you first needed to understand, what is the life that you wanted? How much is this life going to cost you? And then what are you going to do to make money? But for you to even get to the point of living this life, this incredible life, you had to understand how much is going to cost you, because money matters.
Absolutely, money matters, and it's very tied into our desired lifestyle, our deepest desires. We were just sitting on my terrace that overlooks the jungle. We are literally in the jungle, and Vanille asked me, how did you stumble on this place? You know, it's absolute paradise. And when we can get really, really clear on what we do want, and very often we have to go through a phase of what we do not want, or many phases of what we do not want, and actually maybe sit very closely inside loss of what we did have, perhaps. And I know that's happened to you a lot, Van.
Yes.
I'm going to start calling Vanille Van, and I find it a lot easier.
Everyone calls me that.
Yeah. We're no airs and graces on this podcast. So many of you may have been following my story from maybe day one, and many of you may already know that I radically changed my lifestyle around 18 to 24 months ago. It was the next sort of step in a series of constant mini and giant upgrades in my life. But the one that I speak of now is that my family and myself relocated from the UK, which is an absolutely amazing place to live, but that I had outgrown. I had outgrown for a number of reasons, and I'll mention one very, very quickly, and that is the climate. The climate and the weather and the long, arduous winters. And it got to a point of me really being able to admit and acknowledge that I didn't like it anymore. I didn't like pretending that I was going to be okay working my way through a long, arduous, very cold and grey winter. And the reason that I bring this story up now is that finances needed to shift. They needed to change in order to accommodate that soul desire, because, you know, each of and every one of our desires, if we are listening and if we are connected, they come from a very deep place inside of us. Most of us, for most of our life, we're on autopilot. We're living the life that somebody else thinks is right for us. I did it for many years. If you haven't heard my sort of account of all of that, then just go back into the podcast archives. It's all there, no holds barred. But getting to that point and realizing that things needed to change in order for me to be living my authentic life, in order for me to be living the best possible version of my life, then some decisions needed to be made. Okay, and we'll come to the nitty-gritty of it in a little bit later. But money matters because it supports us in living our best possible life yet. And I must just really, really stress, for some of us, it may mean VIP, luxury, flash cars, designer clothes. It may mean that, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But for some of us, it may just mean waking up in a warm climate, being able to throw on as little clothing as possible for the day, and, having the luxury of having access to fresh coconut water every day.
Yes.
It's different for each of us. Maybe this is a good moment for you to pause the audio and think about what it means for you, why money matters for you, what freedom is it going to afford you. Now, you all may know that my focus is on success happiness and freedom, because for me, they all go hand in hand. There is not one without the other. So to bring us in alignment with today's topic, money, dirty or divine, once we can begin to understand that our desires are divine, our desires are coming from a very divine, sacred place. If we are being connected to and led by that divine space rather than our ego space. So there's an opportunity to question, why do I want this? Why do I want to go here? Why does this interest me? Why am I inspired by this? So once we have that clarity, we can then bring it back to my desires are divine. Some of my desires require more money than others. Therefore, money is divine. What's your take on that, Van?
Well, as you know, Maria, a lot of my work has been really focused on understanding the spirit of money. So I'll just talk about my background and how I came to really understand the divinity in money. So earlier this year, I started just working on this concept where I was meditating and I realized that there was still this part of me that really believed that money is the root of all evil. I know, like I'd written a book on money, I've done all this work on money, and still deeply hidden in there was that belief that just totally came out of nowhere. So then I started thinking, what if I connect with the spirit of money, that in the way that the mind approaches something is the way that we see something is the way that we see ourselves. So there's a part of us as human beings that sees money as kind of human. So I needed to tap into my subconscious mind and figure out how to start seeing and understanding the way that I see money in terms of a human figure. So then I meditated and asked to connect with the spirit of money. So then I had this amazing conversation with the spirit of money where I started asking all these questions. And then I asked the spirit of money, how can you be divine? And the answer really blew me away, was this idea that actually money is divine because of what it, especially if we look at our modern age. Most of us as spiritual people come to things like the law of attraction, The Secret, the amazing works of Abraham Hicks, or even the works of Deepak Chopra, all these people, because we're trying to better our lives and attract more money into our lives. And most of us probably wouldn't have bothered going down the spiritual path. I'll be very honest. I probably wouldn't have bothered going down the spiritual path and being more spiritual if I didn't understand that, oh, what I'm thinking is creating my life and somehow impacting my finances. So for that reason as well, money is very divine because it leads us down this path where most of us are really exploring, and then it becomes this tool where we want to change our lives, and then it forces us to realize that for us to change our lives, we need to change ourselves. For us to attract the things that we want, for those of us that are more spiritual are not thinking, oh, we're going to have to kill someone or whatever, we realize that we need to change our thinking. We need to move away from poverty mindset. We really need to connect with our higher selves to be able to attract more money into our lives. So then money becomes this tool to help us connect with the divine within us. So that's why money is divine.
Wow, that's an awesome account. Funnily enough, years ago, I used to believe that money wasn't necessary, didn't need it. And this was really poignant, actually, at the end of my marriage. At the end of my marriage, and I've shared this a few times before in other sharings, my ex had money issues. My ex had a compulsive spending problem, and it was the bane of my life. And we were in business together, and the businesses could not survive because one of us just wasn't being okay with finances. By that point, I had two very small children, very close in age. I was very caught up in bringing them up as well. So by the end of the marriage, this was my way of thinking. I don't care. I don't want anything. Take it all. I just want a peaceful life. And now, all of these years later, I actually realized that was wrong-mindedness, because I did believe that money was evil, because it had brought me so much pain, so much heartache, and there was so much argument and confusion and disagreement from the people around me that I didn't want anything to do with it. I was quite happy to survive on a daily basis. But what that also indicated, and it's only come to light all of these years later, is that I didn't truly know money. I was quite detached from it. And I do believe up to that point, aside from the years inside of my marriage, that I was thrust into the dirty, negative, dark side of it. But up until that point, I'd never needed to think about it in any other way, that it was always there for me. I was lucky. I was born into a well-off family, self-made finance, self-made. My parents were not born into it, but they did what they needed to do, worked very hard. But I was also, this is a biggie, I was also shown that you had to work your socks off to get anything in life. So at this point, right at the end of my marriage, as finding myself as a single mother of two, I had very conflicting ideas and beliefs around money. And actually, it was the last thing I wanted to think about. My heart was broken. I was pretty much destroyed. And what I really needed to focus on was building myself back up, and which I was given the opportunity to do for the early years. I was able to work and able to have things, balance themselves out. It wasn't until a few years later that things literally hit rock bottom. So even right at the end of my marriage, when I was declared bankrupt, right? Because little did I know, now looking back, turning a blind eye or burying my head in the sand, because I needed to be a good mother. I needed to be present for my children, and trying to juggle all of these different balls wasn't possible for me. So it was a huge shock, but it still didn't really hit me. I still didn't comprehend it the way I do today. So even at that point of declaring bankruptcy, I still had this trust. I still just felt everything would be fine. And it was. But moving forward, the more and more evidence I got, the more and more hard times I hit, the more it perpetuated my negative thinking around money. You already mentioned mindset, Van.
Yes.
And the more I realized that I was in this downward spiral that today I realize I had to experience.
Yes.
I had to go through. And I always say to my clients and students today, I had to take the long route so you can take the short route.
That's really, really great advice, actually, because as you're talking, I realize that there's a huge part of me that I'm still actively working on, because there's times when it will come up in meditation where with my first company that I started, it didn't actually work out very well. And there was a lot of anger. There still is a lot of anger and blame that I always think, oh, I've gotten over this. And then it comes up even deeper, that there's this anger and blame that I have towards money, as in, oh my gosh, you let me down once. Why should I trust you? Because you could let me down again. So I think also that's why I feel like money revealed so much of us to ourselves. But at the same time, there's all these emotions that we have with money. So we're in almost a relationship with money, a romantic relationship, because we can be angry at money. We can feel distrustful of money. We can feel totally blameful and unforgiving towards money. And that's another thing that makes us feel like money is the root of all evil. We start to doubt the divinity in money because, well, if you go through traumatic experiences about money, and I feel things like having failed businesses, having being declared bankrupt, those are true financial traumas, and we just need to work on healing those.
It's interesting that you should bring up anger and blame, actually, Van, because before I was married, now I come from a very strong cultural background, and although it wasn't an arranged marriage or a forced marriage as such, the cultural expectation actually equals the same force as an arranged marriage. It's just an expectation. So, and the dream that I was fed was marry a good Cypriot guy and you'll be taken care of for the rest of your life. Not very dissimilar to the American dream, you know. America has everything for you. Go to America and you'll be taken care of for the rest of your life. And that is what I was fed. So I did the dutiful thing. I did the good daughter thing and married a Greek Cypriot guy. And it was absolutely nothing like I was told it would be, that I would be taken care of and I would want for nothing, and that you'd go from the care of your father to the care of your husband. And it was absolutely not like that at all. So I know that the very root, or one of the roots of my money turbulent years, was the blame and the sheer betrayal that came from the men in my life. Because up until then, I was told and very conditioned that money came from men.
Oh my God, Maria, I just got like goosebumps all over the place.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, absolutely not a nice place to be. So as you mentioned, failed businesses, as I set up in business, it was almost impossible for me to prosper and flourish in business as a single woman, as a sole trader, as a person doing it on her own. Now, there had always been an air of independence about me. One of my lifelong themes has been independence and freedom. So even growing up, and in my early to late teenage years, especially when I started driving, even though my father was more than happy to help me and support me and pay for the car and pay for the insurance, I remember very, very vividly saying, "No, Dad, I'm going to pay for this," especially when I was, earning my own money. So there was always this deep desire, which is, absolutely in its prime today. So allowing that to come to the forefront and almost dusting off that confusion has taken many, many years. So money, dirty or divine, isn't a clear-cut answer. There isn't a one-sentence answer to that. But what Van and I want to really encourage today is that you look as closely as you can. You spend some time, and it's not always pretty. It's not always easy. But spending some time exploring your beliefs around money. Now, Van, you've mentioned doing that for yourself in meditation. That's an absolutely spot on way to do it. And having a pen and paper to hand so that you can almost keep a running commentary, because as they always say, better out than in. So whatever is deep inside of you, inviting it to come up into your consciousness for sifting, for understanding, and also to release anything that really is holding you back.
Yes. But I also think for me, I do a lot of work on the emotions of money. So as I've said, for me, it always comes through how I'm feeling about money. So I would really say, be aware of how you're feeling about money, because I often know that there's something going on with money because I can feel in my body that there's a part of me that's actively refusing it. And you know how you're feeling when you're trying to block something away. And then from there, just sit with that emotion and the sensation in your body and just ask yourself questions like, where is this coming from? Because obviously the problem is when we are blaming money, or we're angry at money, or we feel that money has caused us some kind of pain. That's like the same as when we're blaming a lover or we feel that a lover has caused us so much pain, how many of us are really going to be that open with the man and say, come, be my lover again, or the woman in some cases to say, you know what, come, let's have another relationship. The truth is, you're going to be a little more closed off with that lover. You're going to be more guarded, even if you feel that you want them in your life and you really can't live without them. You won't be the same person that you were the first time round. So we need to work on opening ourselves up so we can trust money and trust that it will be there and still have a relation, and that we'll be able to have a relationship with money. And Maria and I were just talking about observing the trust factor in India. So Maria, do you want to just share with everyone what you were telling me about what we've observed in India and trust about money?
Yeah, absolutely. Before I do, I just want to bring up that, as just feeding off what you just said, Van, about the wounds that money has caused us, and just moving around in that kind of victim state, which I did for so long, is that you did this to me, money, or you did this to me, male, in my life, right? And as we know, you talked a little bit about the history of money at the beginning of today's podcast episode, and the history of money. Also, we can look at how money is energy. Okay. Money is energy, and whether you exchange time for time, or energy for energy, or a service for a service, or money for a service, right? And knowing that everything around us is made up of energy. So when we attach negative belief or negative energy to money or finance or abundance, then it's very easy to fall into that victim state, and that it's everyone else's fault apart from ours. So something that was really key in my transformation, my money transformation, was actually taking ownership, taking responsibility.
Very, very true.
And this is a big topic that we won't have time to go in deeply today, maybe in part 2 or 3.
Yes.
But to touch on what I've been observing in my time in India over the last sort of 18 or so months, is being out and about as a consumer and just noticing how when you are in a shop or in a restaurant, and even though you may have the money in your personal wallet to cover what you've just purchased, you may not have the exact change, or they may not have the exact change to give you back. Very often they'll turn to you and say, pay me tomorrow, pay me next time. Or if you're in a shop and you look at something that you want to purchase and you may not have the cash because there's no credit card system here, or there's no plastic system here, it's all cash. And very often you'll go to a cash machine, or you'll go to multiple cash machines, and it runs out of cash. So it's not always easy to figure it all out. But very often the amount of times that I've been told, pay me next time, or take the goods and pay me next week. And we've been exploring, haven't we, Van, about the premise behind that, the energy behind that. And one of the ideas we've come up with is that there's just a very strong spiritual connection here. The ceremonies that are performed on a very regular basis, that we've just had the festival of Diwali, which is all about calling in the spirit of Lakshmi, the goddess of prosperity, the very strong spiritual connection all year round, for me, indicates that it's there. It creates that level of trust. Now, I've talked to you guys a lot about trust and the importance of developing the trust muscle in all areas of life. And I feel that here, it really is at a very good level.
Yeah. India is really, really good like that. I'm really seeing that as well, that people trust that they'll be okay and that they'll be held. And it's weird because this is a program that's been running in my head for the last 3 days, where I'm starting to feel like I am held and I'm trusting a lot more. And I can only say that I think a huge part of that is just the vibrations in the air, because I'm seeing little things where I'm just seeing, oh my gosh, I'm always going to be fine. And I'm not just thinking I'm going to be fine now. I'm starting to see that, oh, I'll be fine anyway, and just trusting. So I think a huge part of being in touch with the divine is knowing that we are held, and then trusting that the money that we want and the energy that we put out there will bring back the money that we want, because we are connected to the divine and we can manifest miracles and call things towards us.
So even though a high rate of the population here is in poverty, is really surviving on so much less than most of us have to survive on, and it is a state of survival rather than thriving. So you would really sit and wonder, how is that possible to be in such a state of surrender when you have so little? So there's lots of valuable lessons there for all of us, for each of us. And having been observing over the last 18 or so months, the behavior patterns and the attitudes and the energy and states of being of these beautiful people, I'd like to invite you to surrender today. Yeah. Surrender to a state perhaps that you've never felt comfortable being in before.
True.
Surrender and trust that if you've got the desire, if the desire's worming its way up or easing its way up from your subconscious to your conscious, which is a gift in and of itself, because most of us walk around in life completely oblivious to what we truly came here to do, feel and be. So if that's coming through to you, then I'm inviting you, and I'm sure Van is too, to find a way, find a willingness to operate a little bit more often in a state of trust and surrender than in a state of worry, fear, and negativity towards your money, because it's there. It's literally on your doorstep waiting for you. Now, more to come in next week's podcast episode. Until next time, I'm wishing you as much courage to be who you need to be today. And I'm inviting you over to the Facebook group, UpGrade with Maria Kay, where you can share more about what you're going on, but you can also hear about what's going on this end. Invite your friends. We're having a blast over there, and you're so warmly welcomed into the community.